So in this PowerPoint lecture, we're going to use this to illustrate the charting method of note-taking, and the topic is going to be on the functions of the forensic scientist. So forensic scientists have various functions. One function is the analysis of physical evidence. And here, a forensic scientist has to be skilled in applying the principles and techniques of the physical and natural sciences in order to identify the many types of evidence that can be recovered during crime investigations. They can also function as expert witnesses in a trial. An expert has to be certified to be highly knowledgeable in the field that they are saying that they're an expert in, and the courts generally verify that before they accept them as an expert. Forensic scientists have, again, with the idea of an expert, they have to be specially trained. They should be able to properly recognize and collect evidence. They should know how to preserve it properly so as not to contaminate it. They can help medical examiners and coroners in determining the cause of death, being an autopsy. Usually a forensic pathologist is a specialty in just dealing with causes of death. Death can be classified as either a natural death, a homicide, a suicide, accidental, or sometimes just undetermined. They can't figure it out. But what a forensic pathologist will do is actually determine the cause of death. There are different stages of death that they look at. One is referred to as the rigor mortis stage. This is the stage immediately following death where the muscles will contract and become stiff. Livor mortis is when the human heart stops pumping and the blood will pool in areas of the body due to gravity, so it's usually lower areas of the body. They appear very dark and purplish in these low areas, and it can help determine when death occurred, time of death, as well as this topic called algor mortis. This is the using body temperature to determine cause of death, because the body tends to cool when the heart's not beating anymore, and it will cool until it reaches, of course, room temperature, and that's variation of normal body, 98.6, down to whatever the room temperature is, can lead a forensic psychologist through extrapolation to determine the time of death. Some forensic scientists specialize in the field of anthropology. These are ones that deal with skeletal remains, bones, in order to determine whether first or not the bone fragment or bone itself is from a human or an animal. And if it is from a human, they are actually able to determine, based upon analysis, what ethnicity that bone came from, the age, the approximate sex, or excuse me, the approximate age and the sex, the gender. And sometimes they can also determine the manner of death based upon probably the way the bones were fragmented or fractured or something of that nature. That's all a forensic anthropologist. Forensic entomologist, this is the study of insects. But what an entomologist in the forensics field determines is knowing the stages of insect growth, such as maggots, flies. Where they are in their life cycle can also determine how long a body has been exposed, because dead carrion, dead protein, dead body, insects will, like a fly, will lay their eggs on it, and within a certain amount of time, maggots will be produced, and then you'll have the adult stage of the fly coming out of it, and they can help to determine the stages of death. In forensic psychiatry, this is where we study human behavior. Here, a psychiatrist, I actually have taken a course in this area of forensics called Psychology and the Law. And what a forensic psychiatrist or psychologist would do is they usually determine whether or not an individual is competent to stand trial. What that means legally is, do they understand a legal proceeding? Do they know what a trial is? Do they know what a jury is? Do they know what a judge is and their functions? What attorneys do, prosecuting and defendant? and that do they know what when you plead guilty or not guilty, what that means. It's all kind of a legal definition. It is not the idea that you're sane or insane. That's a different type of analysis that a forensic psychiatrist or psychologist can undergo and perform. But what they're basically evaluating is, first, does the suspect understand what a legal proceeding is? And then they can also testify as to, is there any mental disorders that the suspect may be operating under that would have caused them to commit the crime in question. We will be dealing with a whole section in here, a project called Forensic Psychology, when we look at the serial killers and the pathology behind serials and why they do what they do, or we assume they do what they do. Other fields that specialize in, that we find forensic scientists doing, the odontology. This is the issue of teeth and identification of individuals based upon dental records. That's kind of falling out of play a lot now because we have DNA analysis that is better. But we could also match up the type of teeth, bite mark radius is used a lot here to match a victim to their perpetrator, etc. Forensic engineering is crime scene reconstruction, to reconstruct a scene to see how it possibly occurred, and, you know, for example, what type of explosive may have been used in a bombing, or where the fire started, and what kind of accelerants may have been used if it was an arson case or something of that nature. Forensics scientists also perform analysis. They perform it both organically and inorganically, using various techniques. But the basic process here that I want to stress is that organic means that they're analyzing living matter or matter that was once living, carbon-based or analysis, and inorganic would be the non-living matter, such as chemicals, you know, like accelerants in an arson case, or gunpowder residue in a shooting, or bomb residue in an explosion, of that sort of thing. And you can see here listed are the different processes that they would use to do this analysis. Now, to move on, your job is going to be to do the charting method of note-taking on this lecture. So in your OneNote, you'll see that there's instructions here that deal with how to take notes using the charting method. I would read through that. And then over here is where you're going to create the notes on this assignment page. Like the other ones, you could do this on paper if you choose, and then you would photograph and put the paper, your photograph, down in this area. Or in OneNote, you can actually insert a table. So you can go to Insert and make a table to do the chart and actually type it in. It's not that difficult. I think you could figure it out. It's basically how you would do a table in Word or Excel to do. A lot of students just prefer to do it on paper and then photograph it. Again, you must have your name on the photograph. It must be clear so that I can see it. You don't turn in papers to me. It has to, with COVID, we're going to have to do it this way until the COVID situation's over, which probably won't happen this year. So that will be the last note, almost the last note taking. We have one more type of note taking we will talk about, and that's the Cornell notes, and that will be the next one down.